get into our Week 8 starts of the week, our favorite segment week in, week out. We're going to go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. I'm both going to give you guys that maybe are on the bubble, maybe they're coming off bad games, maybe they have tough matchups, whatever it might be. We want to go and tell you, look, these guys might be on the bubble. Go ahead and plug them in there. Start them with confidence. So, Alex, I'll go ahead and let you start it off here. Who is your quarterback start of the week?
Yeah, before I get into it, Steph, we got to take a little victory lap for last week. We both did decent on our starts of the week. Had Matt Ryan, Matt Stafford. Neither took the top off, but they were fine in that game. You hit on Antonio Gibson, fantastic game. T. Higgins and Terry McLaurin both had good games. And the T.J. Hawkinson, big game in the last second touchdown as well. So we hit on several last week. Didn't have any huge busts in there. I'd consider that one a win. So with that being said, let's keep the streak alive. Get into a guy we were just talking about, Carson Wentz and those Philadelphia Eagles with Travis Fulgham. I mean, they're playing Dallas. I said it, the matchup is as juicy as it can be. The Cowboys defense is giving up 34.7 points per game through 7 games this year. That's absolutely ridiculous. They're giving up 20.7 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. And man, Wentz struggled to start out the season. He got a lot of criticism, but he is heating up. You cannot put this Eagles record on Carson Wentz. Steph, over the past 5 weeks since those first 2 tough games, Carson Wentz is the QB3 in fantasy football with 24.7 points per game. He's been putting up numbers. He's been doing it with his legs as well, with a couple of rushing touchdowns. The Eagles have had to score points, and he's done it with no weapons. He's done it with Travis Fulgham and Boston Scott and Greg Ward. Now you're telling me that Jalen Reagor or Alshon Jeffrey could be coming back. Fingers crossed they're back for this game. But even if they're not, Carson Wentz is a must-start every week right now. And even season long, I mean, I know this is starts of this week, but you look forward, and once he gets Alshon, Reagor, eventually Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders back in this lineup, some of the O-linemen as well, he's just going to continue to produce. So expect him to keep that hot streak going here in Week 8 against Dallas.
Nice. I love that one. Yeah, it's been throw some respect on Carson Wentz's name. Everyone was all off of the Wentz hype train. I think you can hop back on it now. But for me, my start of the week, it's coming off a hot game against Cleveland. It's Joe Burrow, who's up against the Tennessee Titans. They're 18th against the quarterback position. We talked about Joe Burrow a little bit at the top of the show and his production and what he's been doing for that offense. And you have to plug him right back in. Really only had one start so far in his career where he hasn't had at least a startable fantasy game, and it was against Baltimore where you saw the matchup, the writing was on the wall. But in that game against Cleveland, 74% completion percentage on 47 attempts, 406 yards, and 3 touchdowns. You add in the sneaky rushing floor that Joe Burrow has as well. He's had 3 rushing touchdowns on the year. And the Tennessee Titans are giving up 19.6 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Their defense is middle of the pack against the run, but very vulnerable against the pass. And what do we know that the Bengals want to do? It's throw the ball. Burrow's on pace for 670 pass attempts. That would have led the league in 2019. He averages 42 pass attempts per game, one of the highest in the league. He's leading the league in pass attempts, and he has the weapons group to do it and sustain that passing volume and be able to be relatively efficient with it. We know the Titans are going to put up points. They're top 5 in terms of points scored per game. So even if it's garbage time, Burrow is going to need to air it out. And I think that's going to lead to a good fantasy outing here in Week 8.
I like it. And Steph, it's time for some more spice because my running back start of the week is quite spicy. It's Le'Veon Bell going against the New York Jets.
Revenge game.
The revenge game of all revenge games. And look, people are going to blow this narrative out of proportion and be like, oh my gosh, Le'Veon Bell is going to score, 30 points against the Jets. I'm not expecting some amazing top 10 running back performance, but I'm telling you, this is the week I think you can finally plug Le'Veon Bell into your starting lineup with the Chiefs. I know he only had 6 carries last week for 39 yards, only played 33% of snaps, but he had been with the team for like 3 days or 2 days because of some of the COVID protocols, and they were getting him worked in. It was a blowout game. I didn't expect a huge workload, but I did think he looked good in that game. His yards per carry was great. So looking forward to this week against the Jets. I expect, 40 to 50% of snaps in this game, and he could get 12 to 15 touches. I think he's a good bet to score a touchdown in this one as well. If he can get 8 to 10 carries that are efficient carries, a few catches and a touchdown, he could put up solid RB2 numbers this week against the Jets, who are a very weak defense. He's going to be begging Andy Reid all week long to get him in there for a touchdown. And I think it happens. And in a game where the Chiefs are supposed to absolutely dominate the Jets, I think even later on in that game, in the second half, if it's in hand, they could use this as time to really get Le'Veon Bell acclimated and get him going and get him some work. So I like Le'Veon Bell this week. I will say it is a bit risky. It's riskier than some of our other starts of the week, but I have Bell in a couple of leagues, and I'm wanting to fire him up just about everywhere.
Yeah, in garbage time, I feel like they're gonna feed Bell a little bit. That was closer than most would have thought to a 50-50 split. Now, that was kind of a weird game in the snow against Denver. There was, they were just trying to eat the clock out as fast as they could.
Yeah, DeAndre Washington got like 20% of carries.
Yeah, so I think Lev Bell is their RB2. He's now taking that Darrell Williams role, which we saw him get a decent amount of touches. We've seen Clyde Edwards-Helaire with multiple weeks near that 25 attempt range. I don't think he's going to hit that very much, if at all, for the rest of the season, unless Le'Veon Bell is out for whatever reason. So I think you can expect Lev Bell for double-digit touches, a few targets, probably a touchdown in this game. I love the pick there. And right now the Chiefs are 19.5-point favorites, 49-point over-under in this game. It's going to be nasty. So I want to get into my running back start of the week. You went with the super deep, spicy option. I'm going to go with the chalk option and say, plug this guy in there because I'm ready for an explosion. I think it's going to happen. It's Jonathan Taylor against the Detroit Lions.
Let's go.
Detroit is 28th against running backs. They're giving up 29 fantasy points a week to the running back position. On average, they give up 114 yards and more than one touchdown per week. Taylor is slowly improving as the season goes on. Over the last two games, he's getting closer to that 4.95 yards per carry number, which is exactly what we wanted to see from him. That's exactly the upside that he had and why he was drafted early in the second round. And he's still seeing that steady passing work from Phillip Rivers, the checkdown king himself. Because right now, Jonathan Taylor's 11th amongst running backs in receiving yards, and he's outside of the top 10 in reception. So he's been efficient. He's averaging over 3 red zone touches a game, 20 total on the season, which is top 15 amongst running backs. Expect a blow-up game from Jonathan Taylor here in Week 8.
I love it. I think it's time coming out of that bye week. I think they could really use him to kind of carry the load. Phillip Rivers hasn't looked great, so I love that pick, Stef. I certainly hope he has a huge game for my Colts against a stingy and a tough Detroit Lions team. But let's go ahead and move on to the wide receiver position. Mine's a little bit more chalk, but I just want to give people some reassurance in this guy. It's Robert Woods, and very, very disappointing game last week, but it was a tough matchup against the Chicago Bears. And I know Robert Woods, even before last week, hadn't quite lived up to the expectations where people drafted him. So a lot of people were kind of on the fence with him after another bad game. Some people are going to be out on him. Some people are going to try to be trading him or benching him. You got to roll him out there. I think he is still an every week start, especially against the Miami Dolphins. He's still seeing a huge snap share. I mean, this guy is out there essentially all the time. And before this week, he's been fairly consistent with his production as well. On top of the snaps, he's seeing touches in a really good offense, 6.5 targets a game and 2 carries a game this year. He's going to continue to be involved as their wide receiver 1. So with the Dolphins this week, I know it's Tua's first start, but I expect the Rams to dominate this game. I expect them to get back to their guy, Robert Woods, and get him involved, get him going a little bit coming off of the down week. So if he burned you last week, don't worry, don't panic. Plug him right back in against Miami. I think he's going to have a really nice game.
Nice. I like that start of the week there.
Bobby Trees.
He's always a good, bounce back guy. He's just the classic, just steady, solid wide receiver too. You got to love it. Now, I'm going to go a little bit spicier for my wide receiver start of the week. Yes, we're trading here with running back and wide receiver. Mine is Brandon Aiyuk. For those who don't know, he is a rookie wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. He's up against Seattle this week, which is a fantastic matchup, the second highest over-under on the week. Seattle is dead last in the NFL amongst wide receivers. On average, they give up 60 points a game to the wide receiver position.
Wow.
And Deebo Samuel's now set to miss multiple weeks with a hamstring injury. And we look at what Brandon Aiyuk did just last week against New England. He led the team in targets, more than George Kittle. He caught 6 for 7, had 115 yards, 19.2 yards per reception. And Aiyuk has played more than 70% of snaps every single week so far in his career. He's coming off his first 100-yard game. And you look at how he's being used in this offense. His average depth of target is 10.4. To Deebo Samuel's 2.8. Even though you might look at the box score and see, hey, these guys are pretty similar. They got pretty similar yardage totals, similar targets and receptions. But where Aiyuk is being used is as a traditional X receiver that's going downfield. On top of that, you get the floor from the volume, the usage, really being the number 2 to Kittle on that team now. We've seen when Shanahan wants to get a guy active in a game, whether it's Jeff Wilson, Jerick McKinnon, whoever it might be, they're going to have a good game. That's just what Shanahan has given us. I expect that to remain the same here against Seattle. But lastly here, where Aiyuk gets some additional upside is how he's been used as a rusher. So far this season, he's already scored 2 touchdowns off rushing attempts. So you add in that extra touch or 2 that he may get. I think there's just plenty of upside for Aiyuk, who's going to be the go-to X on this San Francisco 49ers team. Plug him in a great matchup.
Nice. I love that pick, Steph. Now we're going to get into these tight ends. Tight end is brutal, man, and these are so deep. So, if you have someone that's, like a Hunter Henry or, there's obviously the big 5. Is it 5? Kelsey.
Yeah, let's just name them. Let's just name them all. I mean, it's We know who we're starting. Kittle, Kelsey, Waller, Andrews, Jonnu Smith,
Yep. Start him
TJ
every
Hawkinson,
week.
Hunter Henry.
Yep. Even Noah Fant.
Now we get into
I think Noah Fant is a every week start at this point.
What about Gronk?
I think you start Gronk. You still want to start Gronk every week. He's putting up numbers right now.
One more. Jared Cook.
I think you. I mean, if you don't have any of those other,
that's where
if you don't have any of the other names we just mentioned, and you only have Cook, I think he is still an auto start. But after that, I do think it ends. So I'm going to go ahead and get into my guy. This one's deep. It's Irv Smith Jr. against the Green Bay Packers.
Nice.
And this is a guy out of Alabama who is hyper athletic. We've all been excited for him for a while, and I'm surprised he hasn't broken out yet. But he actually, under the radar, has been steadily climbing in terms of snaps, in terms of targets the last couple weeks. And if this guy breaks out, you do not want to miss the boat. You want to get ahead of it early, because if this breakout actually happens, he's one of those guys that could be a league winner, almost like Kittle the year that he broke out. And look, this matchup against Green Bay is a matchup where we expect Cousins to throw the ball. The Packers' offense is elite. Their defense is pretty good, but their offense is elite. The Vikings aren't going to be able to run the ball, 40 times like they probably want to. So Cousins is going to throw. And look, these snap counts for Irv Smith just pop off the page. I know Kyle Rudolph is there as well. But Smith in his last 2 games, 68% and 79% of snaps. He saw 5 targets in each of those games. He's one of these athletic tight ends that can take any play to the house, which is what you really want. Jason Witten, all-time legend, his style of play was like, let me get a bunch of targets, consistent, steady possession production, where you see Noah Fant, you see George Kittle, you see even Evan Ingram, these guys who can take any target for 75 yards for a touchdown because of their speed and athleticism. Irv Smith fits that category. He's super athletic and can take anything the distance. So only a couple of targets could go a really long way for this guy. And again, the tight end options are so limited. You got to take your shots. Shoot or shoot, go for it. Steph, I know you're probably rolling out Irv Smith against me this week. I sadly love that play. So, if he doesn't break out, I'm not going to be super upset. But if he does, you heard it here first.
Yeah, that Blake Jarwin, Ian Thomas stack at the start of the year just absolutely crushed me. And it's been grasping at straws, but maybe Irv Smith is that guy. And if I didn't have Irv Smith, I'd want to throw in my start of the week, Robert Tonyan, for the Green Bay Packers up against Minnesota in that very same game. I'm expecting a top 12, a tight end 1 performance from Robert Tonyan, who's right now sitting at the tight end 9. I know that was skewed by Devontae Adams being out for a number of weeks, but Vikings are middle of the road against the tight end. The Vikings defense has been absolutely terrible this season. Really plays to your Irv Smith point even more. And the over-under is the 3rd highest this week at 52.5. In a blowout against the Houston Texans, Robert Tonyan played a season-low 51% of snaps last week. They just didn't need him. And the game before that, Green Bay got blown out by Tampa Bay. So it's been these one-sided game scripts in both directions since Devontae Adams has come back after that Packers bye week. I just don't know how long Adams can sustain 16 or 17 targets a game. And unless Adams is going to see 200 targets so far on the season, which, hot take, that could still happen, I expect the ball to be spread out a little bit more. And when I look at the pecking order for the Green Bay Packers, to me it goes Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, and then Robert Tonyan. Maybe you make a case for Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but I'd rather go Tonyan there. So I'm expecting a solid start this week from Baby Kittle. If he's on your roster, you probably needed tight end help anyway, so I think you can go ahead and plug Robert Tonyan back in after a really down week.